Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for December 12th through 18th. This week I read one book, I watched 3 shows, I watched 9 movies, and I listened to 1 book. So yeah, this is to be expected after reading 10 books last week. I definitely doubled down on the visual entertainment as opposed to the auditory and reading entertainment. However, by completing the first book that I'm going to talk about, I actually completed my entire TBR for the Reindeer Readathon 12 or 13 days before the readathon ends, so I feel pretty good about that. The physical book I read this week was The Flames of Albion by my very own Jean at Jean's Bookish Thoughts. I love Jean. She is a wonderful human. She also previously co-hosted a round of the Queer Lit Readathon. She lives in my favorite city. She's a wonderful human. If all of this hadn't happened, I was going to see her probably last year in April when I went to the UK, but alas, that didn't happen, obviously. In any case, you may or may not know that she recently self-published her adult fantasy debut, and that was this book. It's the first in a series, and I really want the rest of the series now. It's not written yet, I'm sure, but I want it. Also, if at any point in the background of this video you hear weird sounds, that is the cat. His name is William. I tried to put him outside, but he wouldn't go outside even though he was meowing to be let outside. This book is about Adaria. She's lived at the university in her town for as long as she can remember. Essentially, if children are unwanted or people are unable to take care of their children, they drop them off at the university, and the university brings them up. So that's what happened to her 20-some years ago. She's just going about her daily duties, doing some cleaning, when one day she's cleaning the base underneath a fossilized dragon egg, and the egg cracks. Initially, she's like, oh crap, I broke this, it's hundreds of years old, I'm gonna get blamed, I didn't even touch it. However, as it turns out, this dragon egg was not fossilized, it was just waiting to meet its companion. In this world, yes, there are dragons, and they only hatch when they meet a soul that they want to be their companion. This can be of any race. In fact, there's not just humans in this story, there's elves, there's dwarves, there's goblins, and this dragon egg has chosen her as her companion. This means she has to go down a rabbit hole in the next month or so to learn everything she can about dragons, because in about a month she's going to have one to take care of. The University Council is very excited about this, and they actually write to the nearest dragon and companion so that they can come over and kind of teach Adaria the ropes and what they know about dragons. And it turns out the closest dragon companion is this really bonny redheaded lass named Isla. So just as a rundown, we have a bisexual protagonist with a female love interest and dragons. Honestly, what else could you want? I really fell in love with this world. In the afterword, she does mention that some of the things she put into this are heavy-handed, and that was on purpose. And yeah, some things are very much in your face and very not subtle, but I was completely okay with it because I really enjoyed this world that she had created that was post-monarchy, and just these characters fighting against other oppressive sources. I just very much enjoyed it. Jean, I don't know if you'll ever watch this because reviews are for the readers, not for the authors, but if you happen to have watched this, I'm very interested in the next book, so keep writing. On to the shows I watched this week. Firstly, I finished watching Detectorists. If you didn't catch my video last week, this is a British show about these 2 friends who go metal detecting and then the club that they're in. It's just so lovely and soothing. It's very, very British. It's written and directed by the guy who you might know from the Pirates of the Caribbean that had the wooden eye that popped out. I believe his name in real life is Mackenzie Crook. It's just such a fantastic show. It's incredibly heartwarming and you just want the best for these characters. I highly suggest it. I also stayed current on Canada's Drag Race, which means I watched the finale episode for this season. Listen, I'm never too mad at who wins a season of a show like this. Sometimes the person that I figured would be 3rd wins, and that's the only time that I'm like, really? Really that happened? This was not the case here. The person that I thought would get 2nd won, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm just really sad that the person that I thought was going to win didn't win, because I feel like that queen could also do a lot with the title. That's not saying that I don't think that this queen is going to. I think this queen is going to do a fantastic job. But yeah, if you follow Canada's Drag Race, tell me down in the comments below which team you were rooting for. This week, in fact last night, I sat and watched the first 7 episodes in the 4th season of Station 19. This was a show that I watched about a season and a half of the week before the Queer Lit Readathon, and then during the readathon I didn't watch any of it, mostly because I was watching Detectorists with my aunt. So when I finally finished my book for this week, I was finally allowed to sit down and get back into this series, and it's a hard season to watch, I'm not going to lie. This is the season that takes place during the current time situations. But whereas Grey's Anatomy focuses more on the medical aspect of it, as it would because that is a medical drama, this one focuses more of its attention on racial issues. And since I've already seen the season of Grey's Anatomy that lines up with this, there are certain things that I'm seeing from the other side, and I love that and hate that because I knew certain things that were going to be happening, and then I had to see them happen again, essentially, and see characters grieving for different things, and whew. However, I'm just so grateful for this universe because it is doing things that other TV shows have never done. And although this universe is celebrated for how diverse it is and all those types of things, I love that Shonda Rhimes' response to that is, it's embarrassing that other shows aren't this diverse. It should just be this diverse. This shouldn't be a thing that's like, woohoo, you're doing the best, because everybody should be striving to do this. In short, I love this show, and I would not be surprised if my next wrap-up includes the rest of the 4th season. Alright, on to the 9 movies I watched this week, the first one being A Very Murray Christmas. Chad actually picked this one, which made me laugh really hard because he didn't read the description of what it was. He just saw Bill Murray and was like, sure, whatever this is. Chad doesn't like musicals, and yeah, this is basically a musical. The loose plot of this is Bill Murray is meant to be doing a New Year's Eve broadcast, but it's snowing out, there's nobody around, there's nobody actually going to be in the audience, he doesn't really want to do it, and essentially it's just him singing with whoever happens to show up, and then a whole big dream sequence so they can do some big production numbers. This had a little bit of a charm to it, especially with random celebrities showing up, so if you're a fan of Bill Murray and a fan of cheesy Christmas content, then you would probably like this. Next, I watched my favorite Christmas movie of the season, which was Single All the Way. Look, this has a lot of things to like. Firstly, Kathy Najimy and Barry Bostwick as the protagonist's parents, just wonderful. His aunt, played by Jennifer Coolidge, also wonderful. The fact that his best friend wrote a best-selling book called Saving Emmett, which is about saving his rescue dog, just makes me think of Savvy, because Savvy legitimately has a business where she writes children's book about real rescue dogs. In fact, the next one is going to be about a rescue cat. The basic premise of this one is Peter is sick of being the single person at the holidays every year, and he's very excited that he finally has a boyfriend to bring home with him, and then that doesn't work out. So he decides that he should bring home his best friend and pretend they fell in love. This quickly gets thwarted, but it's just such a wonderful ride. I really enjoyed all of this cast of characters, everything that went down. It was just super cute and super cheesy at points, which I also very much enjoyed. I actually watched it twice this week. I watched it by myself, and then I made Chad watch it with me again a few days later. Speaking of Chad, we also watched a 1995 movie called The Net. In this movie, Sandra Bullock works as a hacker, basically. She kind of tracks down viruses and fixes them for different companies. And then something to do with that goes terribly awry, and she has to go on a mission to basically get her identity back. Listen, this was fun, it was full of twists and turns, but there was one point where I looked over at Chad and I was like, hey, why are you in this movie? And he looks up from his phone, because he looks at his phone a lot while we're watching movies, and he's like, oh, I don't like that.
You gotta go to the jar
What the fuck?
And the whole reason for that is there was a Chad doppelganger, and we ended up actually sending a video of it to his extended family, and they all thought that he was in this movie from 1995. He would have been 11, so no, that's not him, but it looked like him. The next 4 movies I'm going to talk about together because they are in the same series. It's the first 4 movies in the Bourne saga, because apparently there's also a 5th one just called Jason Bourne. However, this was the Bourne Identity, the Bourne Supremacy, the Bourne Ultimatum, and the Bourne Legacy, the last one being the only one where Matt Damon isn't actually the lead. If you've never seen this before, it's a series about a man named Jason Bourne who is rescued at sea, wakes up, and doesn't really know anything about who he is. However, he keeps realizing he has all these really kick-ass skills. Like he speaks a bunch of different languages, and he knows how to tie certain knots on this ship that has picked him up. But he doesn't know who he is, he doesn't know why he's there. As time goes on, he comes to realize that there's an agency that wants him dead because they thought he was already dead, he was a spy of some persuasion, and he's just constantly trying to get away from these people. The interesting thing about these movies is the plot often overlaps, so there will be moments near the end of the first movie that they'll look back on in the second movie and kind of run a parallel timeline to. And what I really liked about skipping all the way forward to the 4th movie is that it takes place during some of the events of the third movie, but with completely different characters. That edition of the saga was actually led by Jeremy Renner, and he is another kind of super soldier type character like Jason Bourne, but he's kind of out in the middle of nowhere and they're running tests on his blood, and it's this whole program, and then the people behind the scenes decide they want to shut the program down, so they send off things to kill all of the different people around the world that are part of the program, and he manages not to die, so he kind of figures out what's going on, and he decides that he's going to make sure that the agency basically pays for it. They're action movies, they are easy to watch. The penultimate movie we watched was Yesterday. I've been meaning to watch this since it came out and I just never got around to it. The premise of this one is our protagonist is a musician in the UK. He does kind of clubs, he does small festivals, that type of thing, but he's coming to realize that his music isn't going to take him very far. However, one night on the way home from a gig, there is a 12-second power outage all around the world. During this power outage, he gets hit by a bus. When he wakes up and he's out of hospital, he comes to realize that there are certain things about the world that the world has forgotten, but he remembers. The one that has the biggest impact on him for this movie is the fact that nobody remembers that the Beatles existed, because they didn't. Sure, the individual members were probably people, but they never formed a band. It's then a mad dash for him to try to remember all of the lyrics and the music to all of their songs so he can use them as his own. This was such a charming premise that it really drew me into this idea, and then seeing him go about this life where he's like, yeah, no, I wrote all of these songs, definitely I wrote all these songs, and then just seeing what comes from that, the kind of trek he goes on towards fame and whether or not that's what he wants. There are also a bunch of actors in this that I didn't know were in this because I didn't know the cast, and I enjoyed every time a new one popped up and I was like, hey, wait, it's that person. That's exciting. It's fun and I would definitely recommend it. Okay, for the worst movie we watched this week, we only picked up this movie because on the screen we saw that Jeremy Renner was in it and we had just seen him in one of the Bourne movies, and then we saw Ben Affleck was there, you know, the counterpoint to Matt Damon. So we were like, you know what, sure, let's just pick this based on the fact that it's got those two actors and we've already watched things that are related to those two actors this week. And that movie is The Town, and this was not a great movie. What it had going for it is set in Boston, which is a city I've been to, so I got excited about that. And I will give it the credit that it did have some very fun action sequences. Other than that, this was not a great movie. It was also directed by Ben Affleck. The major plot of this movie is there are 4 guys going around Boston robbing banks. At the beginning of this movie, that's exactly what happens. They're wearing masks, they're all covered up, they rob this one bank, and there's this one woman that is particularly traumatized by this because they get her to open the safe, and she sees her bank manager die in front of her. And then because they've taken her ID, they realize that she actually lives very local to where they live, and they kind of worry if she's going to recognize them even though they were completely masked up. Ben Affleck's character takes it upon himself to accidentally bump into her, and then he starts dating her. Which, just fuck this guy. And fuck the fact that this movie tries to make you think that, oh no, it's actually true love and they should really be together, because no, that's disgusting. From there you also get to see some perspective from the FBI, the main actor in that being Jon Hamm, so he was fun to watch. But yeah, this was not a great movie, mostly because of that very fucked up love premise that we have. And although I know the Bechdel test is not a measure of quality of a movie, this movie also doesn't pass the Bechdel test. On to the audiobook I listened to this week. That was The Nature of Witches, and this was really good. I didn't really know anything about this going into it besides it had something to do with witches. This takes place in a world that is very much like our own, but there are people that have seasonal magic. Essentially, there are 5 types of witches. There's autumns, springs, winters, and falls, and then very rarely there's something called an Everwitch, who can use the type of power of all of the seasons. Our main character is the only Everwitch in her generation, and she is at a school training to figure out how to use her powers, because it's in a world where the people without magic have used the people with magic so heavily that the world has kind of been depleted, and quite often there's catastrophic weather events that basically are killing people left, right, and center, which is why people are training to fight these events. However, because she doesn't have a handle on her magic, it has in the past resulted in her hurting other people, which means she is very hesitant to use her magic. In fact, she kind of wants to make it so she doesn't have magic at all, so she doesn't have to be stuck in this circumstance. I found this magic system really interesting, and then also the moral dilemma that the main character was in, because she essentially gets a new teacher and he is absolutely the worst, and even if his terrible methods do create some form of her understanding her magic, it's often not worth it, especially when it puts herself at risk and also when it puts other people at risk. What I also really enjoyed is how she changed season to season as well. For example, when we first meet her, it is summer, but it's just about the end of summer and she's been having a fling. But as soon as it ticks over into autumn, she knows she's not going to have the same feelings for this guy. This is something she's been upfront about beforehand, and he kind of just hopes that she still has the same feelings, but he knows that's unlikely because that's what he was told at the beginning of the summer. What I also really liked about this is springs are most powerful in spring. Whenever it's your season, you have more power. You still have power the rest of the year, but the powers are lesser so, and it just means that as she's moving into different seasons, those are the certain powers that she can use more of. I really enjoyed that this managed to be a book about witches who do magic and then was also about climate change. If you're looking for a witchy read and you haven't read this one, I highly suggest it. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you're on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that is down below, as well as the link to my PayPal and my Amazon wishlist in case you would like to buy me a book. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!